I think it's being recorded. Excellent. So welcome to Cloud Foundry July Community Advisory Board. I guess the meeting is being recorded, so if you don't disapprove of that, then I guess you have to drop. With that said, we have a nice agenda today, and we'll get started. I'm actually very excited about some of the talks, so that should be good. Let's see if we can give them as much time as possible. But we usually go and do kind of a regular set of checks. So we start with the foundation, especially because there's a summit coming up in The Hague, the Netherlands, in September, and we have Swarna here who can probably give us some updates. She also put it in the agenda, so if you go to the agenda, you can see some of the updates there.
Yeah, I will keep it short and sweet. The schedule is now live. It's on the website, so you can take a look at it and start adding sessions to your agenda. There are a lot of pre-summit activities, even though the summit actually starts on the September 11th, which is less than 2 months away. There are a lot of day zero activities like Unconference, Contributor Summit, User Day Certification, Hackathon. So I listed all of those in the agenda document or the meeting notes document. So take a look at those and make sure that you are attending, planning your travel accordingly so that you can attend one or more of those day zero activities. Just quick reminder, the standard registration ends on August 2nd. So the prices will go up from August 3rd. So if you are not registered yet, I would highly recommend you to register now. If you are a current or a past contributor, there is a code where you can register at zero cost. So let me know if you haven't seen the code, or I have sent an email in the CFDev mailing list with the code. Other than that, I don't have any updates, but if you have any questions, I'm around till the end of this call or on Slack or email.
Excellent, very efficient. Thank you, Swana. I guess I'll re-insist on the hackathon. I'll be helping run that again. So it's a great opportunity for you to hack on something. You'll have a day, and there's good prizes, and you get to be to go on stage and shake hands with Abby. So that's worth something, I think.
We've also had the tradition of the previous hackathon winners becoming the keynote speaker at the following or the subsequent summits. So that's one chance as well. Indeed,
whatever the cost of like getting an invited speaker, or not invited speaker, sorry, the sponsored speaker, that's about what it's worth, You look at it from money perspective, but I look at it more as pride, right? So it's more important. Anyway, so if you're listening to this, when you register, you can click on the hackathon thingy. There's like a little button. All right. Yes, we do updates of projects. We have Eric here, who's going to tell us all about the core project at runtime.
Thanks, Dr. Max. Yeah, sure. I'll just give a quick rundown of some updates over the past month or so. Actually, one thing that I'll be sending an email to CFDev about soon is that we're trying to have a more centralized point for tracking community proposals that typically just get broadcast on CFDev. I've linked to the repo in there. We've already pre-populated it with some of the proposals that have come out recently. The idea is to have, using GitHub issues and projects with a somewhat more systematic format to track those proposals, where to find them, who to contact, expectations around deadlines for commentary, that kind of thing, and status of the proposals, like if they're still under review, if the team's working on them, that kind of thing. Yeah, so definitely thanks to Swarna and Chip and Lee Chen here at Pivotal for helping actually make that happen. Definitely appreciate it. A few other things to note. Speaking of proposals, we've had the set of breaking changes for safe deployment version 10 proposed. Should be getting released soon. I think most of the discussion has died down on that document. We've also had a minor release of the CLI. I think the main feature there is some experimental support for initiating upgrades of service instances through the CLI. So that's pretty exciting. Some other team updates. Cappy is continuing to work on better states and reporting around rolling deployments. In fact, a couple of the proposals in that proposals repo address those. think there's still time for some commentary on those if you haven't had a chance to take a look at those. One thing of note, UAA apparently has some dramatic performance improvements on its user's endpoint. So if you've been using that for any kind of polling or synchronization type of systems. Some other things, Diego has closed up some of the last non-TLS communication inside of Cloud Foundry. We've had this little file server component to deliver some fairly static assets that had previously been over plain HTTP. So that's all secured. I know everyone's very interested in Irene updates. The latest I've seen from the team is they've largely been working on various scale and performance improvements and hardening there. And they also recently had an internal team inception about a next set of priorities. So we'll be getting some updates from Jules on that soon. Some other things, speaking of scale, the networking program is continuing to improve the scale at which they can support various Istio integrations. So kind of weighted routing for traffic ingressing to the platform, and then also continuing to support better scale for the still experimental sidecar client-side load balancing that takes advantage of the Istio sidecars there. And along those lines, we've had something of a gap between Linux and Windows apps in terms of having Go routers do TLS to application instances, and the Garden Windows team has been making great progress on actually using Nginx to absorb some of the Envoy configuration and provide that on Windows, given that Envoy is still pretty unstable and not really supported on Windows itself.
Excellent, thank you, Eric. Any questions for Eric? No? Okay, we'll go to update from Bosch. The team already posted their updates. I don't know if Morgan is on the call. I think they pinged me, they said they would be. Okay, anybody else from Bosch? Otherwise, I'll read it. So I guess they are version release 270.3. That's kind of impressive, isn't it? Anyway, unless it's 27, but I'm not sure. But that's what they said. And then they mentioned that the director team is main focus right now is working on new endpoints to improve the behavior of Bosch start, stop, recreate, restart types of command. So very small updates from Bosch, but I guess you know, they're churning along. I'm not able to answer any questions on Bosch at this point, so maybe if you have questions, you can ping Morgan or Marco directly. And for extensions, briefly, I'll mention that a lot of the projects have graduated, or at least one of them is moving to Attic. Keep them there. I'll remove it the next time. I said that last time, but I'll do it this time. And we have a demo from Stratos, which is probably our most successful project, and you'll see it's actually quite good. And Neil is here to give us some of where he's moving the project. He's also looking to graduate, so that will graduate too. So if you have projects that you want to submit to extension, you let me know. And with that, we'll stop here and see if there's any questions on community stuff or projects. Otherwise, we'll ask David to take over so he can present. He's from the Comcast team, and he's presenting an external DNS connector for Cloud Foundry. I don't see any questions. So David, it's all yours.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay.
Yep, we can see it.
My screen, okay, cool. Okay, let me get started. So I think a few of the Comcast folks, including myself, were on 2 months ago. We were gonna talk about 2 projects. I think we only got a chance to talk about the Vault plugin. So I'm gonna spend some time today talking about some DNS connector work we've been doing, or that was proposed by some of the Cloud Foundry operators here at Comcast. So this is a.
Sorry, David. You may want to center your the presentation because it's, at least on my end, it's not showing.
Yeah, it's getting cut off.
Getting cut on the
Getting
left.
cut off. Okay.
Yeah.
One second. Let me stop doing this. Let me unplug the second monitor. Make sure.
All right, cool. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're good. Let me just share PowerPoint and see if that makes it better.
Yeah, that should be good now.
Better?
No, once you went, I guess, full screen, that's when it changed.
Okay. I'll keep it off presentation mode then.
All right, perfect.
Not we need to. Okay, cool. So problem statement, I think, and this, like, again, I'm coming in as a developer. I think some of these features were described to me and some of the developer folks from the operators as problems that they have found with, or people that developers using Cloud Foundry have found with some things here at Comcast or just generally. So from a developer's perspective, your application is only bound to a single Cloud Foundry foundation. So not necessarily that portable, and the DNS name is tied to the name of the application. So what we started looking at is there's a project called External DNS. It's a Kubernetes incubator project. And the premise of that project is it configures external DNS servers. So AWS Route 53, GCP, it's got a whole list of them for Kubernetes ingress and services. So our proposal was to look at, could we extend that project to also support Cloud Foundry? So that way you'd get the benefit of having all of the integration with the existing DNS providers and extend that to Cloud Foundry. So extend the functionality of external DNS to include Cloud Foundry as a source type, and that will basically abstract DNS so the FQDNs are not tied to a single foundation. So the general idea would be, let's say you have two Cloud Foundry sites and you have this external DNS. Let's say you have two of them running, pointing to Route 53. And the idea with them is that they're looking for routes that show up on the Cloud Foundry sites with a certain DNS name. So let's say anything that's Comcast.net. So if you have a domain registered on each of the Cloud Foundry sites, Comcast.net. When you make a new app on Cloud Foundry, let's say it assumes the default name of the Cloud Foundry Foundation. So on the Comcast side, that's some site-specific name Comcast.net or .net or whatever. If you add an app there with this name, let's say you want to add another route, something like app.comcast.net. This really inherently is not a routable name because Comcast.net is not controlled by this Cloud Foundry site. It's controlled by, let's say, Route 53. So the idea here would be that external DNS can kind of pull Cloud Foundry saying, give me all the routes that match this domain, and then make an entry on the Route 53 side or any of the DNS providers that external DNS supports, so that this CNAME basically maps back to this name on the Cloud Foundry side. And then the benefit of that, or like one of the common use cases we see here, is that if you wanted to move this app now from Cloud Foundry Site 1 to Cloud Foundry Site 2, your clients using this name basically don't have to change the name of the app they're using, or they don't have to have any of the DNS records manually updated. This is just something that's running in the background, kind of polling both of these Cloud Foundry sites and updating the name on the DNS provider side. So I have a quick demo that I recorded just so I wouldn't end up stumbling through things that I can show real quick, but I just wanted to pause and see if anybody has any questions. Okay, let me show this quick video. Can you see this okay?
Yeah, looks.
Okay, cool. So one of the challenges I had with this was just trying to record a video using our Cloud Foundry instance and not showing too many host names. So the demo is a little sparse since it's being recorded, but I'll go through it and then I can kind of just explain what's happening. So in theory, let's say I have no apps deployed on the Cloud Foundry that I'm using, no apps, no routes. So I push a new app. I sped this up because it takes a long time. say I have that new app, and that's some random generated name, and then this is the DNS name I chose, which is just a zone that we had here at Comcast that we use for testing. And let's say I add another route to that. So in the end, I have 2 routes for my app, this random name, and then let's say demo site. In theory, this first one wouldn't be mapped to this domain. I just wanted to hide what the actual Cloud Foundry domain here is at Comcast. But the general idea is that if I want to keep this demo site .elements.capsps.comcast.net name portable across Cloud Foundry foundations, I'd like to map this to the DNS provider outside of Cloud Foundry. So now that these routes are there and the app is up and running, external DNS is basically running in the background. The default is it runs every minute. So it's going to look and see, did a new entry get added, and should I register that with the DNS provider? So I'm going to do a dig against this just to show that this, like, nothing comes back. And if I do a curl right now, also it's not going to work just because the DNS isn't resolved yet. So I basically waited a minute or two, and then from another machine basically show that the curl will work against that site now. Again, I'm not showing the DNS side, but that was just because I was trying to, hide some details for the video. So that's it. That's the demo. I can show some more details or show code depending on what people want to see, or if they have questions.
So I remember that the link that you sent that we included in the agenda is a PR. What's the status of that?
The PR is actually merged.
Okay.
There's not a ton of documentation that got merged along with it. I was kind of holding off until I presented at the cabin and kind of figure out like what the feedback was and if there's anything specifically wanted to include. So if you go to the external DNS site now, what you end up seeing is it mostly talks about Kubernetes, not necessarily about Cloud Foundry, but the source is in there. So they support, like I said, the 2 Kubernetes sources, and then the Cloud Foundry. Basically, they look for anything with routes now.
And as a operator of a Cloud Foundry foundation, what do I need to do to enable this? Maybe you can give us an idea.
Yeah, so you would, the common pattern, I think, to run external DNS now for Kubernetes is to run it within the pod that you're running Kubernetes. So the way that I have been running it, the way that we talk about running it, is kind of similar. Like you would just run it within your Cloud Foundry site. So maybe each developer would run it for their app, or you could run it within your organization or whatever. There's no restrictions though that it has to run Cloud Foundry. It's just a Docker container. So the idea is when you run it, you point it at a DNS provider, and you point it at the Cloud Foundry instance that you want to run, just with some authentication so it can read the routes.
And then it's syncing the 2? Is that?
It's syncing in the background. So basically every minute we'll go list all the routes on the Cloud Foundry side, and then it will go list all the entries on the whatever hosted zone you're using. And as long as the domain names match, then it will create, delete, or update to keep them in sync. And then, there's kind of nuances to each DNS provider of like what kind of names it's creating and how it keeps track of the records it's creating versus ones you don't want it to touch. But, just from like the common, like create a C name for each app I have in, like, let's say Route 53, that's straightforward.
And of course, I mean, obvious question is that if the foundation got, let's say, updated and, if it's deployed on VMs, the VMs got recreated and so on to Bosch, it will sync up everything?
Yeah, the idea is, and I mean, this might be a difference between, I guess, how people set up Cloud Foundry in different companies. The way that ours is set up is that there's a wildcard DNS to everything on a certain foundation site. So like site1.comcast.net, whatever the URL is. Mm-hmm. So as long as you're getting back to that Cloud Foundry foundation with the right app name and wildcard DNS name to get you back to the foundation, it doesn't necessarily matter where it's deployed behind the scenes. I don't know if that's like a nuance of our deployment or not, but I think one of the things that would be good is if people think this would be useful to get some feedback on, like, is there edge cases that we didn't think about that are potentially applicable to other people running Cloud Foundry in different ways.
Cool. Let's see if there is more questions. I don't see anything on the chat and on the Slack channel.
Let me share the repo real quick, just so I can, or like the project real quick, so people know what it is.
Sure.
My
there's actually a question. I'll read it. So in Slack, or Bush BL, I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing it. It's a great presentation on DNS, and he asked, is the intent of this project to eventually allow users global DNS so that if one CF foundation is down, the app can fail to another foundation?
So that would be doable. I think and this is kind of DNS provider specific, I think. So some providers, like let's say Route 53, let you do like weighted CNAMEs, and then they do health checks. So like you could imagine creating 2 CNAMEs with the same DNS name to 2 different foundations. So it could kind of do like global load balancing based on DNS. But I think that each DNS provider is slightly different. So I could imagine it doing something like that in the future.
Cool. And I looked him up. It's Blaine Forbush who asked that question. And he has a follow-up, so we'll see. But thanks for showing us a repo, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I give you a thumbs up, so thank you for that. All right, so I don't see any other question. Thank you for showing us this, and I guess you're looking for contributors. You already have. Well, the external DNS has quite a bit of contributors already, so that's great.
Yeah, and I was going to say I'll send this out if there's more if you want more details later, if have questions.
Yeah, thank you, David. Appreciate it. Excellent. So that was the second presentation from Comcast, actually. So this is great. Thank you for that. Also, in general, Comcast. All right. So the next one is Neil MacDougall from SUSE, who's gonna show us an update on Stratos. If you don't know about Stratos, I highly recommend you to watch this and then go try it. But Neil, you want to take over? You might have to share your screen or something.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Can you see my...
Yep, we can see it and it's centered. Thank you for that.
Oh, it's looking weird on my screen. Is that just, can you just see the slide?
Yeah, I just see the slides, green slides.
Awesome. Oh, good. Okay, so let's see. The last time we did a Stratos sort of demo at the CAB meeting was back in 2017 when we were, I think we were just about to propose for incubation.
Yeah.
We did various updates at the summit, and as Dr. Mac said, I think we're hoping to kind of graduate or suggest graduation maybe next month. But he suggested it would be a good opportunity to give an update on Stratos and also demo some of the I'll call it non-Cloud Foundry bits that we've added in from Suzer's point of view, just so the community are kind of aware of those. So I'll spend a bit of time just on a few of the things you might have missed that we've added to Stratos, talk about the SUSE bits we've added, and then I will switch to a demo so you can actually see those in action. So kind of real quick, I was trying to think of some of the things we've added more recently in Stratos that you'll see as I do the demo. So lots of look and feel improvements, so particularly around the navigation. So that's something we've been toying with, playing with, trying to improve and get right. There's still more to do, and you'll see it's maybe changed since you last looked at it. Lots of bug fixes and improvements, too many to mention. They're harder to see. Something we've added, you will see, is a thing called user favorites. So if you have multiple Cloud Foundry servers, foundations, clusters connected, then it can be hard to kind of dig into where you want to get to if you're interested in a particular app, org, or space. So we now have the ability to sort of favorite an org or a space or an app or even a Cloud Foundry to make it easier for you to then get to where you want to go kind of from a home home screen, and you'll see what I'm talking about. This is something that some of our users had a problem with, and hopefully this feature helps with that. Invite users. So although we do some sort of role management within Stratos, we don't have sort of full user management in terms of being able to, add users within the UAA. This was a feature that was requested where you can now invite users into your Cloud Foundry. So you can be within an org or a space. If you have the right permissions, you can invite users by email. They will be sent an invitation email. If they accept it, they can then log in to your Cloud Foundry and start developing. Quota management, again, this is something that's not quite in, but adding the ability to view a quota and then manage org and space quotas. Metrics, this is something we have had for a while. I want to just show it in case you've not seen it, and I think the point there is this works with not only with the kind of metrics Helm chart that we at SUSE use, but also with the Prometheus Bosch release. So it does add a few things into the UI, which I'll show, and hopefully if you've not seen those, I might encourage you to go take a look. I also want to quickly show the autoscaler UI integration. This is work actually done by the IBM team, so kind of shout out to them. We've been working with them for a while. They've been doing all of the hard work, actually building the UI. We've been kind of assisting with helping to integrate that and just give them some initial kind of help getting started with Stratos, and I'll talk about that maybe in the context of extensibility. And then lastly, as I've shown here, extensibility, we're doing a lot of work at the moment on kind of improving the way you can extend Stratos. This is work that's taking quite a bit of time. There's still a lot more to do. So yeah, a bit more on that. Kind of the way we've done extensibility at the moment is very much as a kind of a company or organization wanting to have your own custom version of Stratos, you would fork the Stratos repo. There's a space in the kind of repository where you can create your customizations, and then when you build it, those will be brought in. And so there's a good separation between your customizations and the core code. So when you come to have to rebase and update, hopefully there are none, maybe one or two small things you need to merge conflicts you might need to resolve, but typically there are none, and so you can just keep building and refreshing. That's the model we have at the moment. Where we want to get to is make it easier for people to build and publish extensions separately so that people can then share those. So the autoscaler is a good example of this, where at the moment that's being brought into the core Stratos repository, but our intent would be that would be in a separate GitHub repository maintained by the IBM team. People building their own Stratos or kind of taking a Stratos distribution can choose which extensions they want to be in that release by just effectively declaring those as dependencies. So this is where we want to get to. This is what we're doing at the moment, and is consuming quite a lot of the effort of the team. So that's a quick update on Stratos. I'll demo those in a sec. I also wanted to talk about the work we do as SUSE. Dr. Max saw a presentation I gave to SUSE conference and suggested it might be of interest to the broader community. So obviously, I won't talk too much about SUSE's cloud application platform, but obviously that's our Cloud Foundry distribution, and we containerize it. We deploy it on top of Kubernetes. Obviously, the users of that have the option of using either Cloud Foundry or obviously developing workloads directly on top of Kubernetes. Obviously, the application platform being based on Kubernetes can run on various Kubernetes distributions, so the ones you see here from the standard vendors, as well as in this case SUSE's own. And so the sort of guys at SUSE said, well, why can't we sort of extend Stratos to offer an experience for both of those environments? So that's kind of what we've been doing. We've been taking Stratos with the extensibility framework and adding in our own extensions to allow you to connect in Kubernetes, and I'll show also Helm. So the extensions we've got I guess two core ones that are different, if you like, from the kind of upstream Cloud Foundry. One around Kubernetes, where you can connect in to a Kubernetes API server. We've got the authentication for the different environments you see there, so Azure, AWS, GKE. And our initial focus was on views that would help you understand how Cloud Foundry is running on top of the Kubernetes platform. But that's something we can choose to build out. And we also adding the ability to kind of link into and embed the Kubernetes dashboard if that's deployed, because clearly that's a UI that does quite a lot of nice stuff. Prometheus is obviously metrics. This is something that's obviously in the upstream version. I just wanted to call it out here. The main thing really here is we have a separate Helm chart if you're in the Kubernetes world for deploying metrics. The other one we've added more recently as a kind of tech preview in the SUSE world is the ability to add Helm repositories. So we're leveraging an open source project called Binocular, integrating that into Stratos. This allows you to add Helm repositories. You can view charts, you can view releases, you can install a release from a Helm chart, and you can delete and do all that kind of management. Okay, so I'll try and get onto demo quickly. Point I want to make, this is all open source. So Stratos is the Cloud Foundry incubator GitHub repo. The SUSE version is, as you can see there, forked off of that repo, both completely open source. They're both, I think, with the Apache license, so you can take any of this stuff and use it yourself. We're using the same extensibility mechanism in the SUSE kind of variant as we use for Autoscaler and for other extensions. And obviously they look a little bit different. Okay, I will pause, and if I can remember how, there we go. I will switch and share my browser.
So Neil, one thing as you do this,
yeah.
when as you graduate Stratos from Cloud Foundry Incubator, are you planning to go to some place that is bigger, like let's say CNCF, or something that is sort of more encompassing, so that since it's dealing with multiple different projects now? Do you have an idea? Or can you mention that?
I don't know. I think our plan was to stay within the Cloud Foundry. Is this the question? To stay within the Cloud Foundry organization, right? Graduate from incubation within that. The SUSE extensions that we develop, as we improve the extension mechanism, we would like those to be published in a separate GitHub repos to make it easier for other people to leverage those. At the moment, we're kind of keeping this separate from the core Stratos because, a lot of the users are just, vanilla Cloud Foundry users, if you like, and so not everybody obviously wants Kubernetes functionality from the outset. So we want to make it easy for those users that do want it to kind of include it if they need it. I think we will maybe start to look at, showcasing some of this stuff at other venues, cool. Like some of the KubeCon, but I don't think we have any motivation at the moment to kind of move Stratos to a different foundation, if that was the question. Right.
No, cool. We're happy to have you. So sorry to distract you. Thank you for that.
No, it's fine. So yeah, who knows? But not right now. Can you see this now?
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. So this is the SUSE variant. So everything that's upstream is in this version, plus the extra stuff. I just show this also as a way of illustrating you can take Stratos and obviously theme it differently and change the names of stuff and add a copyright, all that kind of stuff if you wish. So I'll just talk about some of the changes or updates that I mentioned on that first slide before I get into the Kubernetes stuff. So when you come in now, instead of going into applications, you get this favorites sort of homepage screen. There's more what we want to do just to make it look a bit nicer than it does at the moment. A couple of things really to point out here. When originally you'd go into applications, which shows you all of your applications across your Cloud Foundries. So if you had a large number of those, it could take a little while to load. So when you come in now to home, it's nice and quick. If applications is not your destination, then it makes it much easier to kind of not have to wait for that to load and jump somewhere else. What you do see here are the entities that you've favorited, and those can be, like I say, they can be a Cloud Foundry. You can see actually I've favorited a Kubernetes. They can be an application or an org, and I can just click straight through and get to the view for that particular entity. So if I'm a developer working on a small number of applications or working in a particular space, it makes it easy for me to jump straight into that part of the UI without having to kind of navigate through the various hierarchy. So that's the user favorites. As I do kind of jump around, you'll see that the activity tracks where I went, so I can easily get back to there. You can see also, let's see, when I went in there, we've changed this nav slightly. You can collapse this one down, which I'll do. And we've got this side nav. This, if you remember or paying attention, this used to be across the top as tabs, and that kind of caused some confusion. Now these are down the side, which I think is better, and it allows us to kind of have global actions just at the top here, and then actions specific to your kind of context in this area here, which has cleared up some kind of usability issues that we've had reported back from our users. Okay, so that's just a hint of around some of the restructuring we've done. User favorites. I guess if I go into Cloud Foundry, one of the things we've added here is the user invitation support I mentioned. So this needs configuring. You need to configure a UAA client that has SCIM invite access. So you have to be a Cloud Foundry administrator to do this. And once you've done that, it means you can drill into an organization, you can look at the users, and then I can invite a user. So I can, maybe I won't do it right now, but I can, maybe I will, enter a username, enter a user's email address, hit invite. So this will actually create a user in the system for this person. It will add them as a user of the org that I'm in, and as soon as they then receive that email and click on it to kind of set up their account, they can then automatically log straight into Cloud Foundry and start using it. So this was a feature the cloud.gov guys kind of requested and relied on. So you can do this at both the org and also at the space level. So if you do it at the space level, you can specify which roles those users should get within the space by default. And you can also do multiple users. So I just did one there, but you can put in many. So that's user invites. I guess the next thing we've added is quotas. So if I look at the top level Cloud Foundry view, you can see I can see all quotas now. So this is showing me all of the all quotas I have within this Cloud Foundry. If I go back, actually select the IBM Cloud Foundry, you'll see it's got quite a few more. I can look at one of those and I can see the quota limits for the various aspects like memory application. I can actually edit. There's a bit of tidy up to do here with the ones that are unlimited, but you can go in and either edit that quota. I can go back and from an organization, I can go down to quota. I could, see, I don't have permissions. So because I don't have permissions to create a all quota within the IBM Cloud Foundry, which is why I'm not seeing the button. But if I went down to space quotas, it doesn't look like I've got permission there either. So that's good that we track the permissions model. But if I was in one where I do have permissions, then you'll see there is the create button, and I can go through and create a new quota from scratch and assign those to orgs, or drill down, go into spaces and assign those to spaces. So that's the quotas stuff we've added recently. That's a thing that we've, an area of the Cloud Foundry API we've not had coverage for up till now. Just quickly on metrics, I've registered and connected everything up here in the interest of time. If you're familiar, then the way that you add endpoints in the UI is from this endpoint screen. This has been made a bit more visual than previously, just to kind of help users. So in the upstream version, you would only see Cloud Foundry and metrics. Because of the SUSE version has some extra extensions, then you get different endpoint types as well. So you can add a metrics endpoint. You give it the name, the address of your Prometheus server, connect with your credentials if they're needed, and then Stratos will work out which Cloud Foundry and also Kubernetes, if that's relevant, that Prometheus service has metrics for, and then you'll get additional views within the UI. So if you just click on the metrics endpoint, you can at least see which Prometheus exporters are configured and where they're getting the data, and if it's got any errors. If I go back to my Cloud Foundry, and if I pick like an application here, you can see I get an extra metrics tab, and I can see some basic CPU, memory, disk metrics for the application. It's only got one instance, so I only get one graph, but obviously if there are multiple instances, you get graphs for those. And you can change the time window or create a custom one if you want all that kind of nice stuff. We also, on the instances view, if you've got metrics configured, we are able to determine what cell that metrics, that application instance is running on. And so you can then drill down and you can get cell information. I think only the administrator can see these views, not regular users. But these are useful if there's an issue with a particular Diego cell. You can see what's going on, and you can also make it more easily kind of see which other app instances are running on the same cell. So if you had a problem with your system with one of the application instances crashing or something, it might be that another application is actually causing the issue. So there's some initial stuff here to help you from a metrics point of view. I almost forgot to show autoscaler. So if I get into the IBM Cloud Foundry and just look at a dead simple app, then you'll see, because autoscale is enabled on this Cloud Foundry, I get autoscale tab, side item. And this one's I just set up with a policy. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm not going to take too much credit for the great work the IBM guys have done. They're working to refine this a bit further. But you can see, you can enable it. You can enable autoscaler for a particular app from here. You can set the limits in terms of how many instances it can scale between. So this can scale between 1 and 15. You can set up the scaling rules. This is showing the last metrics that the autoscaler has collected, that it's then using to drive whether it should scale things up or down. And you can see earlier on, I was testing this. So I scaled the app instance to 2. And then after a while, it spotted that I was using less than 15 megabytes, which is my rule here. And so it scaled it back down to 1. So this just shows me the kind of the event trail of what it did as it was autoscaling this app. So this is a nice feature that will be in the next release. So that's everything on the sort of Stratos side that we've been added, in the last couple of months or so. On the Kubernetes side, so this is stuff that we've added as the SUSE point of view. It's in the SUSE repo, but it's obviously open source. You're welcome to take it, put it in your own version if you wish. As I said, you go into endpoints. You can add a Kubernetes endpoint just as you would add a Cloud Foundry endpoint. You give it a name, an address, and then on the next screen you can optionally connect straight through it. So that's one improvement we've made to Stratos. Previously, you registered and connected as 2 steps. We make it easier to do that in one go now. And depending on which Kubernetes environment you're registering, the authentication is different. So there's different forms to supply the right amount of information. This is just a dev system, so I'm using Minikube for simplicity, and I've gone ahead and connected that. I can drill down into the Kubernetes. We'll talk to the Kubernetes API in the same way we would talk to the Cloud Foundry API. So these views, there's more refinement to be done, but you can see we get some high-level kind of graphs in terms of usage and whether there's any pressure, application count, that kind of stuff. There's some views where you can look at the nodes. You can drill into a node. Again, because we've got the metrics server connected up, we can get some basic metrics from the Kubernetes as well. We can see some pod information in terms of the pods running on this particular node. So some of this you can get obviously from the Kube dashboard. Our focus was some initial work here to make it easier for people in the context of Stratos to see what's going on with their Cloud Foundry deployment. So here I've got SUSE Cloud Foundry as part of the Cloud Application Platform running on Kubernetes. I can also jump through to the dashboard if I wish. So if I know there's things I want to do in the Kube dashboard, then if it's installed, we figure that out and we can proxy it through using the Kube proxy or tunneling API, and I can use it within Stratos here. We can also, I don't think I've got it here, but you can jump through to, from the namespace view directly into the namespace view inside of the Kube dashboard. This is something we're thinking a bit more about in terms of how best to kind of integrate the Kubernetes dashboard. And then also, if I wish, I can open a console. So hopefully this will work. So we'll spin up a pod in the background in Kubernetes, and then we'll configure it, and then we'll exec through using the Kubernetes API. Because I've already registered a Helm repository, we'll also set that up for us here as well. So what this has done is it's set me up with an environment where I can basically run kubectl commands and also Helm commands. And so this is all configured with the kube config already generated for me based on my Minikube environment. If I had other cloud providers connected, I can do the same, right, and not have to do all that different setup for the different environments. So this just obviously shows I've got, you know, the cloud application platform, the metrics deployed, UAA, and it's also configured the Helm repositories that I've added. So that's quite useful from a developer point of view. Let's see, I'll skip applications. Then the other last bit I want to show quickly is that Helm. So obviously Helm is described as the package manager for Kubernetes. So you can have Helm charts, which make it easy for you to install applications or services within Kubernetes. We use a project called Binocular, as I mentioned, which has a UI, and we've done some extensions to that. So just as you can add a Kubernetes endpoint, you can add a Helm repository. So I've added the stable Helm charts already. That's quite a large one, so it takes a while to synchronize. But I could add the Stratos Helm repository. Finish. Hopefully this will work. Cool. So you can see I've got a second Helm repository now, and it's busy synchronizing the charts from that repository into a local store that I can then browse. I can jump through. I can just see what my state of my two repositories are. I can look at charts, and I can then view the charts. This is a bit like the services view that we have if you've seen the marketplace, but instead of it being for Cloud Foundry services, it's for kind of Kubernetes or Helm charts. Let me go back. So I can pick a chart like Airflow. We get the view of the chart in terms of the README, the icon, and we can understand a bit more about that chart. The various versions, I can pick a different version. I can understand how I would deploy it from the CLI, or I can also deploy it directly from the UI here. I don't know if this will work. There's more work to do with allowing you to specify the value overrides for this Helm chart. Okay, so hopefully that will load. It's a little bit slow here with the Helm API at the moment. In Helm version 3, this will improve drastically when they remove the backend component. So you can see now we've deployed that Helm chart. So there's now a new release, containers, etc., inside of Kubernetes, which we can now retrieve. Cool. So we're in a state of our chart for release being created. So there are 6 pods creating. I'll go back and just quickly show you. I can look at the cloud application platform, Cloud Foundry. I get a summary of this release in terms of pods and containers. I can see what version I've got deployed. When a Helm chart deploys at the end, typically you get some notes, so we can retrieve those for you. We can show you what Helm values you deployed this chart with, and then we can also show you which pods and services are part of this, this release. I think that's pretty much it. So at the moment, and also you can actually look at what version of Helm you've got deployed in each of your Kubernetes environments. So much like Cloud Foundry, the kind of ethos with Stratos is that you should be able to connect as many and multiple of each of the different type of endpoint. So I've only got one Kubernetes connected here, but I could have connected, you know, an EKS and a GKE, and here we would aggregate across those different clusters and show it all in one view. Same with releases. Okay, so I tried to whiz through that quite quickly. I think there's probably a few minutes left. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. A lot of the Helm Kubernetes work, some of it's actually already in SUSE Cloud Application Platform. We consider it production ready. Some of the newer stuff in here is kind of in a tech preview state, and that's functionality where we're kind of finishing off at the moment. I guess I'll pause there, and if there are any questions, happy to take them.
We're blown away, man. I don't know what to say. You should see the chat.
So I've got a question.
Go
How
for
did
it.
you guys achieve such a state of awesomeness?
Oh, that's very kind of you. I have a great team. I have a great team behind me. That's the key thing. And talented.
I look at this and I think this is one UI to rule them all. And again, Wayne said the same thing too. So this is awesome. Thank you, Neil.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to be careful, right? Because there are UIs like the Kubernetes dashboard and Monocular. So our approach is to try and integrate those in the best way and leverage their functionality, fill gaps, and make it easy for people to kind of see stuff in the right context, right? So the metrics here, you know, we don't want people to have to jump in and out of different UIs. We want to make it easy to contextualize some of the information they're saying.
The beautiful thing, and the part that I love, is the fact that you guys are embracing the other UIs. All the other UIs are very context box bounded, right? Like they're for specific context, like a single cluster or a single entity of some type of thing. And you guys are basically embracing that and wrapping that. That's what I absolutely love about this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe let's see if there are more questions from people. Let's see. Right. So Strona is suggesting present this to Kubernetes, but I think you have a talk, right, coming up at the KubeCon.
I've got a talk coming up at the summit. I'll probably show this in maybe more detail. I haven't got one at the KubeCon yet. That's something we're looking to do for sure.
Okay, cool. Couple more things. I remember when I first used this, I set up a whole Stratos thing and used it on a cab to the summit in Boston using my phone, and I was blown away at the fact that everything was quite usable. Is it still usable on a phone?
It is. I think that there is more to do. We did a recent round of I guess regression fixing where some things had not got so easy to use on a phone, and I think there is more we can do there. But it should still be useful on a mobile device, yeah. And if it's not, then you know, file defects on GitHub issues, and we'll certainly look at those.
Okay, so basically, it's part of your goals to make it, you know, UI responsive to mobile devices.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, it's not the highest priority on our list because it's quite a rich UI. So some of the things you do, it is harder to make them scale down to a mobile device. But it is certainly a goal we would like to have, that ultimately we make the best of the device that you have.
Cool. And then the other question actually is something we've been chatting with some colleagues at IBM is, are you planning to add something like, you know, other, I guess with the endpoint mechanism that you have now, in theory, you should be able to add other components, right? So something like, for instance, Knative, that sort of, you know, burgeoning, is that on your radar, or is it something that maybe you would be willing to have other people help you with?
Oh yeah, I'm not sure Knative is directly on our radar right now because we, you know, small team and we're trying to juggle all of this stuff. But certainly, if other people are interested in pitching in, we'd definitely be welcoming of that. You know, like I said, this does use the extensions mechanism, so you know you can add new endpoint types through the extensions, APIs, and new authentication, you know, mechanisms and types through that API. So we've been using our own APIs to build these extensions, and so that should enable other people to do the same if they wish. And we're certainly willing to kind of help other people, or you know, work together on things like Knative for sure.
Right. And when the extension, I guess, re-engineering is done, it will make it a little bit easier because people can kind of own.
Yeah, it will make it easier for people, and it will certainly make it easier for people to share those extensions.
Sweet. Cool. Let's see if there are other questions. Comment. No. All right, we only have a few more minutes, but this, again, this was awesome. Please pass along this message to everybody on your team. This is great. And we look forward to seeing you in The Hague.
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. Thank you, Neil, again. And I don't see any other questions. So we really appreciate this, and we'll all be trying it. So thank you again. All right, take care, everybody. We'll see you in 1 month in August. I'm trying to get Irini team, so probably we'll get Jules to give an update on Irini, which should be exciting. All right, put some pressure on him. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.